use.
That's a different discussion, isn't it? That's a commercial, they, I mean, I think it's gonna take a couple things. One, we gotta determine if it's commercial use and it belongs in the commercial zone. Or a variance or something, or
Something.
conditional use permit or something. If it's a residential use and, you know, for someone's house, then I don't, just building, you know, holding to the building setbacks, because I know we've got a couple problems with some are across lot lines and
Yeah.
other things, but holding to the building setbacks, I mean, should be about all we need to do for a residential one. I don't think we wanna be limiting people where they, I mean, the property only, you know, it sounds like you gotta be at the right angle, you gotta be right place, it's not like you have a lot of flexibility in where you can put them. So you don't wanna impinge on that flexibility by regulation, I don't
Well,
think.
Well, as long as it's within the setbacks, right?
Right.
yeah, but the problem is, it needs to be addressed, and other states are noticing this. 'Cause any solar array I've ever seen was in a field, so farmland is being impacted. They could go in locations other than a field, but it's more work, more cost, so obviously it doesn't happen. So I think that, that needs to be addressed.
So how does that affect what we worked with the property up on Concord Stage, which is,
That, we okayed that already.
right,
I mean, that's a,
agricultural as opposed to
Yeah,
residential agricultural.
it's like a 1 acre field.
But that's a commercial application, that's a commercial
Right.
use of a solar array, that's not.
And we sent them to the ZBA for that, I think.
Yeah, they did
Yeah,
go.
we did.
Well, the suggestion I had, and I can't even find it, I wasn't really prepared to speak to that tonight, but, we do have wording in our zoning that we could apply to locating, solar arrays. I mean, I don't have a problem with an individual home having a solar, I'm not
Right.
trying to impact that. I'm saying commercial-based, ventures should be restricted, I believe, at least. Some of the farmlands that we have. And I know I was reading that in Maine, that's where I've seen most of the big solar arrays. And they're concerned, I think it's the state legislature that's addressing it, but I don't know what'll happen.
Well, the ones I've seen in Massachusetts tend not to be in agricultural areas, they're commercially zoned on a major highway. You know, Route 20 has like 3 between Oxford and Sturbridge on an former empty commercial lot. That's huge.
Well, that's not what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
But you're saying that for commercial use, you want it limited to what?
Well, some kind of limitations on placing those solar arrays in farmland, in fields. I don't know if you go by soil type or, I mean, we do have a lot of soils that probably have grown up, so that might not be the smartest thing to do. In other words, they were fields, they've
Right.
grown, so we say, well, you can't even put it there. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But, I think that it's something that, should be addressed. I was aware of one large proposed, very large in fact, solar array coming to Ware, but it wasn't on farmland. So that kind of,
You want commercial?
no, little ag land, but not in fields, not in farmlands. So I don't have much to offer in the way of wording. Well, I I'll revisit that. That item.
Okay, well, I finally spent some time on my draft of the wetland ordinance. And I came up with a combination of, like I said, Goffstown, Kingston, Hampstead, what else I used. Which is what Naomi copied. I had a nice neat one at my house, but I left it there. Basically, if you go to page, in the zoning 38, where the whole wetland ordinance starts. 28.1.
Yeah, 38, where it begins.
I'm not proposing to change anything in 28.1, 28.2, 28.3, 4, 5, 6, 7, until you get to 28.8 setbacks. Right now, we have a 50-foot buffer, 50-foot wetland setback from all lots that existed after the date of that ordinance, whatever that date was. And we have a 25-foot buffer from all wetlands, doesn't matter when they were made. Doesn't matter if it's a 30-acre vernal pool or if it's a 3-square-foot puddle. You get the same 25-foot buffer and 50-foot setback. Which to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If the wetlands are good and important, we should protect them, and if they aren't important, why are we protecting them? So this creates a sliding scale, basically. And it's up to us, it's up to us to determine what the setback is with consultation from the planning board or the Conservation Commission. Uh-oh, I see a typo. So you get the soil scientist to do a report. The report is going to tell you what the classification of the wetlands are as far as things listed here: size, topography, floodwater attenuation, stormwater retention, etc. If you have a real good wetland and then it meets, or it doesn't, if you have a wetland that does not meet those criteria, you have a 25-foot setback. If you have a wetland that meets most of those criteria, you get a 50-foot setback. If you get a good wetland that meets all that, the setback's 100 feet. So, well, 25, 50, 75, 100 for different variances there. And I'm proposing a buffer of 1/2 of the wetland setback. So if you have a 100-foot setback because it's a really good wetland, you got a 50-foot buffer. Conversely, if you have a 25-foot small wetland that's doesn't have very good functions or values, you got a 25-foot setback, you only got a 12.5-foot buffer. If the wetland's under 3,000 square feet, it has no buffer, no wetland, no setback, no buffer.
So you could eliminate those wetlands.
No, you can't fill the wetland, but you can go right up to it. State law won't let you fill it. The thing I passed out says the planning board shall get, after allowing the Conservation Commission a minimum of 45 days, I wanted to say 30 days. I meant to change that, I didn't.
That's on the one you emailed.
It's the one, it's an email?
Yep.
I thought so, okay.
Yeah, everything that's in the email is there except for what you handwritten. So, talk to me how you're arranging 28.9.2. Is that
28.9 was gonna be,
Exceptions?
28.9 will be the way I have it with the red line, with what's crossed out.
Theirs is not color.
Pardon me?
Yeah, but it's still crossed out.
Okay.
Yeah. So then 28.9.2 is the wetland buffer will be half the wetland setback?
Yes,
So that goes on the second page, right?
yes.
Okay.
The exceptions, those are gonna leave the same, except again, I was gonna get rid of within the right of way. And that's only because when you're building when you're building a road for a subdivision and you're crossing a wetland, you have to be, you put a culvert in it, you gotta be 4 feet of cover over top of the culvert. By the time you do all that, you're up in the air quite a ways. So you're gonna be affecting the outside the 50-foot
Right.
right of way.
Should we address in here? It might be a good place to address it. When you have to impact a setback or the buffer for driveway road construction, that it's a conditional use permit, not a variance?
If you do it for roads, you're allowed.
Okay. What about driveways? I'm not saying to expand the building envelope, I'm just talking
Yeah,
about.
right,
driveway.
to get there.
Right. Driveway, other utilities.
Yes, this is the place to do that. That's got to be under 28.8, right? No,
It would be under 9 under buffers, wouldn't it?
Setbacks and buffers. I think we're going to address both of them,
In both places, yeah.
right?
So I think that, just to go back to the 9.1 should be 9.2 and 9.2 on the front should be 9.1. Because it's a statement of summary and not an exception.
pardon me?
28.9.1 talks about exceptions.
Yes,
To put your wetland buffer would be half the wetland setback. After that suggests that it's under exceptions, and it's not.
okay,
So it
yes,
should be 28.9.1
yes. And the
and
exception should be 2.
28.9.1 on the present document should be 2.
Yes,
And that's where you would also put, actually, 2. You'd have to put your, what Bruce just brought up in both 28.8 and 28.9. I don't know how the language is supposed to go.
well, I was wondering if we should make 28.8 a different heading, uses allowed by a conditional use permit, and make 28 setbacks 28.9 and make buffers 28.10.
That works.
And 28.8 would say the following uses are allowed with a conditional use permit from the planning board. Or something like that.
Are those, any of that addressed in 28.6?
No, because people have been
No.
Okay.
going to the ZBA for driveway crossings.
Or should the uses allowed by conditional use be last?
Or
Yeah,
it
I
could
think we
be
should-
9.3 to say conditional use as a heading,
Yeah, I think we should make it last.
or 10.
Really?
How do we usually put that now, other places?
Or make it, there is no, well, there is, but it's not titled like, it's not made bold, like, or I guess that's an error.
So under 29, Article 29, when you get to page 48, you got point 12, which is special exemptions, and point 13, which is conditional uses.
Yeah, I guess it makes more sense to make it 2810, doesn't it? Okay, so I'll come up with something else on that.
And on, when it says relief granted will be a sliding scale, it should be, will be based on, I said that back in ages ago. Do you know what I mean? Just to make the sentence flow.
Relief.
When you're in 28.8, the relief granted will be based on a sliding scale.
Yeah, okay. Just one thing to remember, if we do this, it may mean a few site walks.
After
Yeah,
the
I'm fine
fact.
with that.
Okay. Just,
No one else does them.
I mean, before we just take everybody's word that the wetland is poor value and we're gonna have a 25-foot setback, we might wanna go look at it.
They're gonna have to get a dredge and fill permit, because, I mean, we're only gonna allow this for people that are crossing it, then they get a dredge and fill permit to go through the,
Well, yeah, but you're not crossing it. If you're going past it,
yeah, I'll just help with some wording to address that. They have to minimize the impact, I mean, try to stay out of it as much as.
oh, that's gonna be part of the conditional use
Yeah,
permit.
yeah,
Yeah.
But, yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I don't mind you walking those, I mean, doesn't take long.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Okay, I gotta start at least. I did not look at private roads, I did not look at ADUs, which I assume is why we have people here, or those other things unless somebody else has.
Well, isn't, the issue of private roads,
On my list, I got short-term rentals, private roads, detached ADUs and size, plan link, which I didn't do that either, I don't think, and go to the Board of Selectmen and beg for dollars. That's the only thing else I have on my list.
we have Article 38 that was approved,
Yes.
but it was disallowed, it's disallowed because of the language of private roads at the beginning of our document. So to address, and I can't remember where that's listed.
I don't remember where that was anymore. Naomi used to have these memorized. She could tell us right quick where that was. You can't build on private roads. Oh,
1711.
yep, I just found it. Page 22. Oh, I don't have my copy of 38. 7, I don't think.
So this is what you,
No, I don't.
Article 7, I can't remember the year, 2021, I think. Article 37 is the one that institutes private roads. So in order to make this functional, 1711 needs to be restated, and that will solve the problem if Article 37 is what we want it to say, or should say. And this was what you emailed, you got it from Maureen, I think.
Tony found it,
Tony found it.
but I don't seem to have it with me.
But that Article 7, Amendment number 6 passed. Through a conditional use permit.
That was that was mostly, that was defining a private road.
Development on establishment of additional private roads.
So I think all we gotta do is 1711, strike all private road from the sentence, right?
If that's what we want to do.
So what's the,
Because then that would
this would
take
become
over.
effective?
Right.
So what does no building permits on new homes for class 6 roads?
They have to get a variance, like they do now.
Okay, we set up road standards for a class 6 road, I mean, not a class, a private road, shall be same as a class 5 road,
Yeah,
if
but
you're establishing a new.
that's for private roads, not class 6 roads, right?
Right,
Right.
just saying,
Right,
that there's expectations of what the road should look like
right,
here.
right.
So I think that solves the problem.
Either that or we just change this maybe better instead of, because that is more suitable for new private roads. Maybe we ought to, instead of striking that part, say, or existing private roads. Because we got a bunch of private roads around now that will never qualify for that.
Right,
Can you pass that around, please?
I don't remember seeing that, but
I do.
so you want to just add the word existing?
That would open this up for interpretation for use for new private roads,
Right.
proposed new, what do you call them? Because this is for the establishment of private roads, so that means that existing one wouldn't qualify, right?
except here it says, no building permits for new multifamily residential homes with access from any private road shall be issued unless the planning board has issued a conditional use permit authorizing.
But
such
that whole
development.
thing is all conditional use permit.
But the purpose here is for establishment of private roads, so.
Well, it goes on to say a conditional use permit is not required for an accessory dwelling unit or an accessory use associated with an existing or authorized multifamily residential home on a private road. So it's, I think, my interpretation of this is it includes existing private roads.
Okay, well, we just strike it here, we just add the word existing, either one solves it. I think solves the issue, right? Yeah, I guess we could just strike private roads here, because this first section is for all private roads, this here is for establishment.
Right.
So we could probably just strike this off of here.
I just forwarded that
So if somebody comes
email to
to,
you.
if somebody comes to us and wants to build a house on a private road, I thought I had something, anyway. They have to come to us for a conditional use permit and then go to the planning, to the selectmen, or are we skipping the selectmen? Because they got a conditional use permit.
Oh, what was that?
But if we have a article saying that the planning board can grant a conditional use permit to build on a private road, why go to selectmen?
We could go to that flow chart that the council gave us.
That would only apply to class 6 roads.
Oh, okay.
Strike private roads.
That's right, that's right.
Pardon me?
I thought that,
Not, right now, it does apply to both. The attachment didn't come with it.
What's that?
That's okay, I can find it, I got the
Yeah,
date of,
attachment didn't
I got
come
the
through.
date of when he. All I gotta do is go
Sorry.
back and look at May 22nd sent item, and I got it.
Yeah, you just have to search private roads and it comes up on as the first one.
I thought there was something in that article about, well, maybe I'm wrong. Do we have a definition of a private road in there?
No. So, there must be a definition in the zoning. If it's prohibited in 17.
I don't see a definition for any kind of road.
town road is towards the end on page 17.
I didn't look under T.
You got street.
So that would be a secondary thing to add to that list of definitions, what a private road is.
I thought there was something in there that had to be on a map. That was recorded, it had to be on an official, so it had to be on a map that was,
For existing, right?
or before the zoning ordinance were created.
Yeah, that was all part of the whole flow chart that meeting we had.
I thought that was in the article.
I remember her talking about it in the meeting that.
Here it is, oh, that's the article itself. So, Article 4.1,
Yes.
we were to add the definition according to this. Add Article 4.1, private road shall mean an access to 3 or more lots. Private road must be shown on a survey plan dated prior to March 1988, or be shown on a plan approved by the planning board. The planning board may only approve private roads with a conditional use permit application.
Where'd you find that?
In my notes.
Cool.
You want it?
I'd like to see it. I assume I wrote it.
You need to make copies.
Yeah.
This is different than what you had.
The only thing different is that the definition is, this is what was approved by the town, but we were supposed to add that. Otherwise, this is all exactly, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
That was our proposal, I guess. So this section is 37. It's not in the.
This must be old because this says 22 feet wide and this says 20 feet wide.
Right.
So
But that was the one Tony found,
Right.
that was part of this article.
And this didn't get
Correct,
added
that
evidence.
didn't get added that day.
Can I steal this?
Yeah.
I'll even scan it and send it to you tomorrow.
Okay.
What other wealth of knowledge you have over there about private roads?
Just gotta change the language in the document. Because we gave, what was it up on some hill? There were already 2 houses sharing a driveway,
Yeah, yeah.
and the third driveway wanted to be added.
Up off Maple Walls,
White Mill.
White Mill.
Yes.
That's why Looking Glass Lane.
Oh.
We also have one on Maple Wall. Sparrow Drive.
Terra Drive?
Sparrow, like the bird.
Oh, yes. Yes, I remember that. Does anybody have a copy of this flow chart we've been talking about?
I looked, I think it's in my other land use book,
It must be in top of my filing cabinet too.
because I thought I stuck it in.
If anybody finds that flow chart, could you email it to me, please? Naomi's gonna go, it's right here on my phone, I know where it is.
I'm sure Chip will dig it right up for you.
Pardon me?
I'm sure Chip would dig it right up for you.
Sure, yes. Was that Chip? No,
Chip was going crazy with that.
but that was after the whole flow chart meeting upstairs with
Yeah, yeah.
Laura
Yeah,
was
Chip
after
was
Chip.
gone, yeah.
Yeah, that was somebody else who won't. Okay, so I need to add conditional use permit stuff to my Article 28. I've got things to work on with the private roads. That brings us down to you and your
I know.
EDUs.
There's some, I get some stuff together.
Yes, you did get a couple of responses.
I know.
The one thing I saw in one of those responses about the ADUs was it had to meet all the setbacks, of course, but if it's detached, it had to be behind
Yep,
the front of the principal structure,
right.
which makes perfectly good sense. I would almost say it has to be behind the back of the principal structure. Maybe. Well, no, that wouldn't make sense. The other thing to think about would be architecture, make it look like a barn or a garage.
You don't want to do architectural review on anything.
I hate architectural reviews. I hate those things. I hate the thought. But I think people would be a lot less against detached ADUs if it looked like a barn. There's people in the audience may disagree with me, I don't know that, but.
What did that Bedford stuff give any indication that I gave you?
Pardon me?
I gave Bruce, Bedford has a ordinance on it, and their limitation's 1,000 square feet. But I can't remember if it had, architectural or
Yeah.
where placement.
I haven't had 5 minutes to look at it.
Anything else?
I've had a couple of, other towns that have adopted rental ordinances that are really similar to what we were looking at last year.
Yeah, we got those 3 or 4 replies. You got
Yeah.
more than that, I know that.
They're, I mean, their fees are a little steep, their application fees. But one of the things they did was, you could essentially, it was kind of like a permit by notification on a state level. You could get away with it for a year until you get your things together to do a full application, but you could pay it, which it would be a way to get everybody aware of what's going on. And for that permit by notification thing, I mean, I'd almost be, if no one has to do anything other than accept a piece of paper, I'd almost say, okay, it's not gonna cost you anything, just fill out this piece of paper, and then you have a year to get the permit process started.
Started?
Well, essentially, that's what that one did. It was like
Which
$100 for
was
the-
that Freedom, or was it?
Yeah, it was up that way.
Yeah.
Well, the permit process should be pretty simple.
It is.
You gotta make sure you have,
But the problem, I think that everybody recognizes is, even though it's pretty simple, a lot of these places that people are using don't even meet the basic requirements. So they really, you do this by notification, then you're on the radar and you get a year to get the bare minimums done, so you meet the basic requirements, so that you're not trying to get them up to speed right away. That's essentially what I thought the purpose of that process was. I mean, the requirements they had listed in that particular one was
I don't think I
very
saw that
minimal.
one. I don't think I saw that one. Or I didn't look at it, one or the other.
Yeah,
Either way, you have work to do on that.
yeah. But there's a couple that have been adopted by some towns now that aren't that far off from what we were looking at last year.
Okay. Anything else?
I had one thing.
Yeah, I figured you had something.
2 years ago, first meeting we came to, I think, my wife came up, Dave Pratt, Winter Road. My wife came up and talked about a situation with an abutter. Part of that conversation had to do with permits being granted without going back for DES approval on a site plan change. And Mr. Fillmore had mentioned that that's something of concern, and you would look into doing something to put in place to cover something like that. Has anything been done in that respect, and is it on the radar?
It's on the radar. Has anything been done? Nothing's been approved, unfortunately.
Nothing's been approved? Has anything been submitted or reviewed or talked about?
Oh, yeah, the planning board and the selectmen, and we've gone back and forth several times about the whole thing. And the fire chief, you're the one who's pushing it, really. Spearheading, I guess the better way of putting it.
Rentals.
Well, rentals is part of the equation, but in our instance anyway, but the topic was, there was an approved DES plan, and there was an original permit given in accordance with that. And then there was a permit approval given
This
3
one-
years later.
This is the one where he had a septic system designed, he ended up putting a garage in and had a, quote, office in the garage, so he needed a restroom.
It is the one, yes.
And then it kept going and,
Well, it's been, DES has made him do a remediation plan and everything, but the whole thing is that it wouldn't have, or may not have gotten to the point where it is, had the permit been halted till he got the DES approval. And there was a total shift in the garage, which doubled the impervious land on his property, which was a major no-no. He was allowed 28, he was somewhere around 52%. So, had it been caught here, you know,
Well, we don't-
what the outcome is, probably would have been the same thing, but probably wouldn't have entailed 2 years' worth of.
the plan you're talking about being approved by DES was probably a shoreland protection.
It's shoreline
We
protection.
don't look at those at all.
So if someone has a permit within a shoreline protected area, you have no concern about that?
The planning board has it's out of our jurisdiction. That would be the code enforcement officer should be looking at that.
So if someone applies for a permit, code enforcement officer should be looking at making sure he has a DES approval?
I'm probably gonna say something wrong here real quick, but
Well, I'm not looking for you to say,
I'm not trying to point
Yes,
fingers, I'm
no.
trying to avoid pointing fingers at anybody.
but there should
Theoretically-
be something that the town does is say, do you have a DES permit? You know,
When he
does
files
this
for-
match what your DES
When he
permit
files
was?
for a building permit, that should be done.
Correct, but he went in for a change to the permit.
To the town.
Came to the town for a change to the permit, and
And
there
he
was,
changed the
there was no
location of it.
reconciliation on his DES approval. I mean, I've been here, there was a meeting for some company who was enlarging his facility, and the question was asked of him, you have a DES permit for X amount of tonnage? I think it was, I don't know, it was Gutter Dunn or who it was, but, the question was asked, but there was, no one said, can I see that information? He said, yeah, and we take his word at it, which, you know, was good one day, but his word isn't really good today. But anyway, the bottom line is, there should be something that,
When someone comes to us and they need DES permits, we actually have them put the DES permit on the plan that we approve. We don't approve the plan until that permit number is on there.
So we may not actually see the permit, but whoever the designer is.
and that's fine, but there is a permit number. It's a
Right.
shoreland protected area, so if someone comes in to say, I'm gonna change my plan, and it totally changes the way that everything is situated, and in this case, like I said, doubled his impervious area, that should be a red flag, say, hey, wait a minute, has this been approved? But yeah, I get a permit, has there been amendment to the
I think that
permit?
would be the building inspector's,
Unless he came to us for site plan review.
unless it's commercial. If it's
And
commercial.
I know it did, yeah,
If it's
that one didn't.
If
So
it's
then
residential,
that's-
we don't, if it's a residential site plan, we don't look at it.
Well, but
Commercial, we look at.
whether he comes here, he's applying for his permit. Whoever's looking at the permit should be saying, wait, this shoreline protected area, yeah, we gotta make sure the ducks are in a row before we just say, yeah, go ahead,
I agree.
so.
For what that's worth, I don't know what's,
Unfortunately, that's not us.
Well, I know it's not you, but
But
whoever's,
you're right.
whoever's
When-
giving the permit, I mean, it comes
Before
from.
any permit gets issued, the person that issues it should make sure that any additional state, federal, whatever permits need to be issued are there.
But doesn't that checklist come from you?
No,
So you don't build that into any type of
No.
plan? Permitting, isn't permitting in the zoning ordinances?
the building permit
is
is
that
a totally
separate?
different,
the building code, building permits are totally separate. It's not part of the subdivision site plan.
So who's
zoning.
in charge of that?
Building inspector.
Bill inspector creates the permit
No,
requirements.
the building inspector
he presents.
enforces it.
Right.
The selectman approves all that stuff.
The selectmen put together the
No,
permit
the building
requirements.
inspector puts it together, then the selectmen have to approve that,
But who's in charge of the permit
the
requirements?
building inspector. Code enforcement officer, building inspector.
Creating and making,
It's actually the building inspector, because they're,
The building inspector issues a building permit.
right, but they're the license, I mean, they have a license, there's a building inspector's license, so part of that, they should know what they're doing.
right, no, so they issue the permit.
They issue the permit.
They look at the permit, issue the permit.
They
but
review
who-
plans, they review the plans
They-
before they
they-
issue the permit.
They should be reviewing the
Who puts the
structural.
criteria of, who puts, so
National
there's
Building
a,
Code.
there's a document that says this is the building permit process, right? Who puts that together?
I think there was one put together eons ago, and we revised it a little bit.
Fee schedule. We talked about the fee schedule, but we didn't.
We, as in the planning board, revised it, but we ended up giving it to the voters, or does that go to the selectmen?
Selectmen.
Naomi?
That was just for fees, that wasn't for the structure that he's talking about.
Yes.
No, the permit process, who owns the permit process?
Building inspector department,
inspector.
building land and use department.
He creates the building process, he,
So so if you
Documents,
go
what
in
has to
for a
be done.
building permit, right now there are two. One is for commercial or any type of residential home building. The other is a short form, which is for building your shed
Additions.
or small additions or interior type of remodeling. The first one is a hefty packet of information that you have to have all your jots and tittles taken care of, as far as who's doing what and who's licensed to do what. And the design has to be submitted that, then the building inspector will review that and say yes or no, based upon the design you presented. So the gentleman, the question that's, you're asking us about that particular issue is that that process was done initially. The follow-up was what fell through.
Right.
So I don't know the timing, whether it was COVID between having a person who was building inspector or part-time person, I don't know. And so, not knowing that detail, I can't speculate as to the timing of, well, that's the person to blame, type of thing. So, but it should have been, they should have come in to say this needed to happen. But who that person spoke to may have been the secretary, or may have been the building inspector, or may have been the assessor, depending upon whose hat was being worn at that time.
No.
When they moved the garage, when they did their first inspection, they should have realized the garage was in a different location.
Well, they did.
Right. We could say the same thing,
They did, and it was reviewed.
The same-
I don't know who reviewed it.
the same thing, a similar type of situation happened with Dollar General. Dollar General was supposed to have a certain siding on it. The inspector should have said no.
The inspector did say no.
Well, after I pointed out to them.
Right. But it was already a done
Then he got
deal.
overruled.
And so the end result is that they were, whether it was the inspector that failed or the company that failed, somebody did something wrong to get the siding that we have today. They came in for an adjustment to say they would like to change the plan.
Right.
They got rebuked that night because they should have come to us before that was even put on the building.
Well, all I know is it did get flagged, and then the permit was issued 5 days later. So
So
And nobody-
that's not us, though, that's.
I know it's not you,
that's-
I'm not
so-
saying it's you. I'm saying there's a gap, and that gap has to be fixed. And I don't know who to go to fix the gap. I
Right.
figured the planning board is the ones who
Well-
take care of that, but obviously it isn't.
Right.
I mean, the town is kind of, they're trying to hire a building inspector right now, obviously.
No, I know.
And they're not having much luck.
So,
So we've been,
so the building inspector is in charge of setting up, okay, here's when someone comes in to apply or ask for a change in a permit, these are the steps we gotta go through. That's, the building inspector says, this is
Correct.
what you have to do.
Right.
So till
Or
there's a
they may-
building inspector, it doesn't get fixed, is what you're telling me.
Right. So, as an illustration, some of those things are also addressed by our code enforcement officer, who will come in and someone will say conceptually, what do I need to do? And they'll say conceptually, they need to come talk to us because of the changes they're doing on that particular piece of property. And then when they come to us, it's really not necessary. So we've addressed something like paint color because of the ordinance pertaining to the village ordinance as to what paint color should be, or what color your replacement windows should be. In both those settings, we were of the mind, well, as long as it's not hot pink, out of the order of what is around you, then it's acceptable.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna now put a purple house in a field of beige, that's not, that's still within your right to do that, and you could continue the process to have that right, but most people aren't gonna do that. So in those two settings, it was conceptual as to what they were planning to do. We didn't have a problem with it because it wasn't outside of the norm of what that area was.
All right, so, so you say you've been discussing it, but who's been discussing it?
I thought you were gonna talk about short-term rentals and that kind of, and ADUs.
That's another
Yeah.
issue that,
That's what I thought you were talking about, when I said we've been discussing it.
yeah. I mean, I get a personal issue with it, but that's, this is the bigger one, and this affects a lot of people, so.
Right.
A lot of people live near shoreline.
and I really empathize with you,
Feel sorry for them?
Phil, yeah, on that situation, because some things happened that should not have happened.
Right.
I completely understand where you're coming from, I mean.
Well, I'm just, so 2 years ago was when we came in, and 2 years later, no one's addressing that issue. And it was mentioned, this has to be done, but
Have you
it
gone to
seems to not
DES?
have been pushed anywhere. Oh, I've been to DES.
Okay, I assume,
We got a lot of good friends up there now, so.
no comment.
But unfortunately, we don't have any jurisdiction over that.
So the bill inspector is, when he gets here, is the guy that I wanna be on top of to make sure that that gets fixed, is what you're telling me. All right, and who's his boss?
Selectmen.
So the board of selectmen are the ones I wanna push on to make sure that the building inspector puts a list of criteria together when looking at shoreland area. Okay,
Which should be no different than what DES does.
I
Well,
agree.
in all reality, DES, to my knowledge, does not inspect anything unless there's a complaint.
Yeah. Amen on that.
Then it's gotta be a big complaint, because there's only
Yeah.
one guy that covers the whole state.
Right.
I mean, I had a client in Sandwich, so it's nowhere near us, but he ended up filling some wetlands. He didn't realize they were wetlands, but anyway. My job was to get the wetlands restored. I had to make inspections every 6 months. I was supposed to make one 3 days ago. I haven't done it because the client hasn't paid me for my last inspection 6 months ago. And I'm not gonna tell DES that, but they've never asked for it. I'm not gonna do it. And they've got a complaint. Of course, it's a year old now and everything looks nice, but I'm not gonna, that's beside the point. They should be following up enough to say, hey, Craig, where's your inspection?
Yeah, I don't disagree.
But DES's enforcement is
Stretched out.
very, very lacking.
Yeah,
They rely on the towns and they'll tell you that.
yeah. Well, we were told by the attorney that the town says DES is responsible for it, so there's a circular firing
Yeah.
squad going
Right.
on.
Yeah.
And it's not appreciated.
Shortage of help too, you know?
I know, it's not really an excuse, but
No.
No, it's not.
I understand, especially when the problem's been in front of people for 2 years.
Nope.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. Did you say we had some minutes to look at sometime?
Yep. 3.
They're on the website,
Pardon me?
they're on the website. You wanna look at that?
No, I don't look at that. Want to save them for next time?
13th, 10, and 24th.
We've been saving minutes for a long time, so.
You have to look at 810, because 810 is not verbatim.
And it's already been posted.
YouTube is.
Pardon me?
On 810,
On
your meeting
August
minutes.
10th was already posted and sent out to everybody. And
Oh.
it's not verbatim, it's not even close.
It's a draft, though.
Yeah, well, we looked at it, and looked at the YouTube, because we were wondering where the conversation started.
Okay.
And just, minutes,
Minutes don't have to be word for word of the meeting.
they're not verbatim.
Some of them are.
Well,
Not so much verbatim, but there was a lot of information about that.
And it's essentially the intent of the conversation is the only thing that needs to be listed.
Yeah, it wasn't understood.
It was very sketchy about the intent of the conversation.
Was I here that day?
Yes.
I was?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. My anniversary's the day before that, so I wasn't sure.
You have 810 there?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just look at it.
Towards the end of the meeting,
Towards the end of the meeting?
yeah. It was about short-term rentals.
To be honest, I don't remember if we said anything, what else we said, but I'll check it out. I can download the minutes and look at the YouTube video, I guess. Anything else? Members of the board, anything else? Naomi, what else we got?
I put down what you told me to.
Okay. Is that a motion adjourned?
I think much way to turn.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Can I?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Second one,
Chuck the second.
John, and Brian.
Yes.
Aye.